Hi, I'm Daz. Here we go. Here's a piece of amateur radio equipment that's valve, so something different for me. This is a Codar CR66, dates 60s. I've often seen this in old practical wirelesses and gone, ooh, that's a nice thing. I know it came as a kit, or you could buy it ready built, so I'm just wondering whether this one was a kit already built. I don't know. This one's got the signal meter in, so there's a magic eye just here. I'm not sure if that's the original knob on the aerial trim, but the rest looks original. It's not in bad condition, it's a bit scratched. 2 dials, band dial and a band spread, and 4 bands, which seem to cover the medium wave band, 160, 80s expect 40, 20 band, 20 meter band as well, so up to 30 megs. Let's have a look round the back. Scratch. Yep, just some loudspeaker connections. This must be a modification. I'm expecting one somewhere. You know what us radio amateurs are like, we always modify things. And an aerial and earth. I bought this some while ago and I haven't even looked at it yet. So I don't know if it's been recapped or what's been done to it. It's a 4 valve plus rectifier set. You wouldn't expect that to be that sensitive, but I believe it has some regeneration in it, so I need to have a good look at the circuit diagram and just see where we are with this. Okay, so that's my first stage of disassembly. There was 4 screws underneath and 4 at the front. So we can now see it, its lid off. See the various tuning capacitors. Now that one is the antenna trimmer, isn't it? So just one tune stage at the front end, and an aerial trimmer and a couple of IF cans, and the mains transformer mounted at the top. Very heavy, this steel case. Right, take the bolts out of the chassis next, I think. Okay, so I've unbolted the chassis and it's come away as a whole item, which is pleasing. Just have a look at the chassis. It indeed looks like there's no work been done apart from changing the mains lead, and don't think much of the cord grip. It looks like original capacitors, smoothing choke. Appears to have the sort of mustard coloured capacitors in. I don't think they're a problem. There's some original electrolytics in it. Sorry, I'm just fighting with the tripod. And there's the audio output transformer at the bottom. So it's nice and clean inside. Was it hand wired? Was it built a kit, or was it made? I don't know. Hard to tell. Typical British summer. It's August and it's absolutely pouring down. A few hours with the soldering iron and listening to some music. I've changed all the electrolytics. Some were leaky. Some resistors had been changed because they've actually doubled in value. The rest are around about 10 to 15% high, so I've left them. In this case, one thing of note, and that is that I appear to have some broken cores. Hopefully they're still adjustable. I've noticed some cut off wires, so obviously something's been added at some point and then removed. This Bell and Lee socket here, I think that's used perhaps to extract audio. I guess being the 60s it might have been for a tape recorder, quite possibly, as tape recorders were very popular in the 60s. Something else I might change is on the output transformer, the headphone socket is connected to the anode of the valve. I guess that's for high impedance headphones, but I probably won't be using high impedance headphones. I think it might swap the wiring. Always worries me about having headphones on and the only thing between you and 250 volts DC is a capacitor, but there we go. Well, I have all my test equipment ready. I've got a light bulb, isolation transformer and variac, so I think I'm getting ready to power up now. I'm going to monitor the HT voltage. Right, well I think I'm ready to go now. I've got meters on filament and also on the HT. I think they're in the image, yes, but there's a battery symbol right in the way. Right, let's turn it up to 20%. Ah yes, I can see filament voltage coming up. 0.8, 30, 40%. 2 volts on the filament. Uh-huh. 50%. 3 volts on the filament, that looks good. And the HT yet though. Definitely got the switches in the right place. It's on receive, not standby. That's good. Oh, and here comes the HT. 1 volt, 2 volts, 3 volts, 24 volts, 33 volts. That's looking good. 4 volts. No smoke so far. 60%. HT's coming up. Nothing yet. Speaker's definitely connected. I thought I'd heard something by now. 70%. Oh, a little buzz. That's good. Some audio. 80%. HT is now 175 volts. Right, around 90. We have life. Bring it all the way up. HT is about 250. Filament voltage 6 volts, that's acceptable. We have life. Well, I've disconnected the variac now and all the monitoring. It looks like it's out of adjustment by a fair way. I'm on 1.1 megs and the scale is showing just under 800 kilohertz, so that's fairly out. I'm throwing in quite a bit of power as well, 10 millivolts, and it's not really that sensitive. Plus this IF gain should, in theory, be causing oscillation when I turn it fully up, so it's like an oscillating IF stage, but that's not happening either. So I think I'm going to have to look at the circuit diagram and figure out how to trim this beast up, because maybe why it's got broken cores, someone's attempted to do so and been unsuccessful. Okay, I've just had a look at some instructions I've downloaded from the internet, and the procedure is to put the 470 kilohertz into the aerial socket, and then to put a link across the oscillator tuning gang, which I've done with a Codar clip lead, and now I'm starting to adjust the IF, and I'm starting with the second one and the top core. It doesn't feel very good. Ooh. Oh, definitely out of adjustment there. We've definitely got a peak there on the scope. And that'll be the bottom of this one, I guess. Sorry about the tone. Whoop. There we go. Just reduce it a bit. It'll be this bottom one here. There we go. I'm using the oscilloscope. I think you can probably see that. Also being very careful. Right, first core, top of the first core. And then the bottom of the first core. I've got the AFC turned off. That's handy having that, because it means I can... And I'm just backing it off with the IF gain as I bring it up. So I think it'd probably be worthwhile going through that a second time. So top of the second. Get my adjuster in. No, I don't think there's a lot more to be gained here, but no, that stage is definitely off. I wonder if I can now force it into oscillation, whereas I couldn't before, so it's quite possible that I can, now that they're peaked. I think I'll turn the generator off and just see if I'll turn the modulation off and just see if it'll... Right. That's the modulation off. Will this oscillate itself? I can hear the hiss coming up, but it's not heterodyning, is it? Oh, could be a weak valve or a resistor I've missed, I guess. Oh, okay, well that's some progress anyway. I can definitely see more sensitivity on the IF now. Well, I'm now going to start the alignment procedure. Interestingly, because of the position of these trimmers, I have to adjust these cores for the oscillator from the top, so it's a case of making sure I don't catch my fingers on the HT on the meter, but oh, there we go. So that's 600 good. Now I have to go to, really? 1.2 kilohertz. 1.5, do I? Frequencies quoted above. Well, irritating tones. Yeah. Band 4, 600 kilohertz. Right. Okay, 1.5 kilohertz then. Megahertz even. It's not far out. Ooh. Oh dear. That doesn't want to move either. Not good. Okay, so a little bit of contact cleaner and a bigger screwdriver, and I've managed to free off the trimmers now. Just got to find 1.5 megs. There we go. I've turned the output down as well. Doesn't seem very sensitive. I'm popping in 316 microvolts. It's going to be more than that because it's at 50 ohm input. So yeah, it looks pretty deaf, but you know, that's 1.5, and now back to 600, I guess. 600 kilohertz. Frequency 600 kilohertz. Slightly out now. So 600. Back to 1.5 megs. Right. 0.5 megs. It's out again. Okay. Good. Well, it looks like I've got to do this 4 times. That will take me a while, won't it? Go through all the bands. Well, I finished swinging the core back and the tuning back and forth about 7 or 8 times. I don't think I can get any improvement now. So now it's a case of going for the aerial trim, and it says only to adjust that at 600. Well, that's the aerial tuning peak. Right, I tried at 1.5 megs. What have we got? 2 divisions. 1.5 megahertz. I'm now gonna see if that peaks. Well, that's not very good, is it? It's a good indication that the sensitivity is a lot lower, even adjusting the aerial trimmer. I followed the correct procedure. Half mesh. There's only a top trimmer on the oscillator, obviously, because you've got the aerial trimmer to adjust for the aerial side, but I'm disappointed it's not peaking better than that. I'll have to think about this one, find out where I've gone wrong. Right, I've gone up the band gradually in 200 kilohertz steps, and this is at 1.3 megahertz, and I can peak it, but I am virtually unmeshed. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll go back to 600 kilohertz and I'll set the trimmer not half meshed but a little bit over half meshed, reset it, and then see if I can trim. But what the problem looks like, I've basically at 1.3 megs I've got the aerial trimmer unmeshed, so it's obvious to me that I'm going to need to set the trimmer a little bit more capacitance at 600 and try again and see if that solves the problem. Pretty close to 2 divisions, so that's 1.5 meg. Go to 600 kilohertz. Well, I don't know, how accurate do I expect the tracking to be? Probably, with something of this vintage, I think I'm probably trying a little too hard, but I think that'll do. Now to do the other 3 bands. Well, unfortunately the broken cores are giving me a little bit of hassle. These coils for the oscillator, etc., are a different type. I have tried substituting some cores removed from 10.7 and 455 IFs, but the permeability I don't think is high enough, because I can't get the local oscillator down to a low enough frequency or high enough amplitude. So I have got some bits that belong to this one, so it might be a case of gluing them back together to try and get enough inductance, but it's always a little bit of a, not knowing when you buy something like this whether you're going to come across this problem. It's always a bit of a risk. My problem with the band 2 and the core I have sort of solved now. There's an oscillator coil and an aerial coil here. So what I've done is I've found the nearest ferret I could that worked the best in the oscillator, and now I've swapped them round so that I've taken the core out of the aerial coil and put it in the oscillator coil. I guess it means that my Q might not be so good, but at least now I've got an accurate frequency sweep, so that might just do to get around my problem of the broken core for the moment. Well, day 3 on the Codar. Where we got to, I have done the alignment despite the broken core issue. I seem to have got fairly good tracking and relatively stable oscillator, so I'm quite happy about that. Done a little bit of reading up. This socket here is standard. It's buffered as well. Magic Eye works. It's a little bit dim, but I've got it on the local station and it's completely closed it, so I don't know if I can zoom into that. Yeah, you can just see it glowing. Yeah, that's completely closed that. So it's very sensitive actually, considering basically amplification wise there's just 4 valves again. What have we got? What's the valve lineup? I didn't even say, did I? Yeah, ECH81, which is mixer oscillator, EBF89 IF and a pair of diodes, so it develops the AFC as well, and then there's a dual triode ECC81. So yeah, it's actually quite sensitive actually now I've aligned it. I'm quite surprised how sensitive it is with just a short bit of wire, so that's not too bad. Now, I've read up in the manual and it says that you're supposed to detune the last IF downwards and then it'll burst into oscillation. I'm not really sure how that works. I've scribbled out the circuit here. It's a terrible drawing, but I'm trying to figure out how you get some sort of feedback, and the only thing I can see is feedback from the output, the IF here, back into the cathode, and I can't see anything else, so yeah, it's definitely a little bit different to what I've seen before. So I think I'll have a go at getting the IS stage to burst into oscillation next. Now the question is, which way? I'm going to turn this volume back a bit because this does suddenly go off on one. Now, which way is downwards? So, BFO, IF gain to full, detune the bottom core of the last IF downwards until you get into oscillation. Right. Oh well, that worked well. Oh, all I've done is detune the IF. Well, that's kind of annoying. That didn't work. Haha. Right, I just had a thought. If this is feedback, there's a 0.1 capacitor here, isn't there? Well, that would stop any RF feedback, so now have a listen. Ha 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 ha! So that sounds like we're getting somewhere. So good stuff. Although it's not very stable, maybe it'd be a little bit better if I pulled the core out a little bit. Okay, sorry about the noise. Here's the 150 ohm cathode resistor. Here's the bypass capacitor. I wonder if that's where the BFO switch would go, which is mentioned in some of the information I've got. Good. I'm making progress. Excellent. Well, I thought very long and hard about this before I did this. I found I've got another identical switch to what was on the radio, and I've decided to fit it on the back panel so that we can turn the BFO on and off. So yes, it has now been modified by a radio ham. I had to think about that, but I decided to do it anyway. It's on the back panel. I certainly do not want to modify the front panel of this radio receiver. I think that would be a shame to do that, but as this mod, from what I've understand from the instructions, is an official one, I've decided to put it in the back so that we can turn the BFO on at will. So that's how I've decided to leave that for now. But what I might do now is go back and reset the IF core back to where it was, and just see how the BFO behaves. I've already twigged that if you twig the IF core, you can adjust the frequency slightly, and it already is around about 1.5 kilohertz below the centre frequency, so it's not really far out. That sounds more or less ideal, so I'll just see what the loss of sensitivity is. Well, let's just see if it'll peak back again. No, wrong way. Wrong way. Yeah. Okay, let's see what I'm trying to turn the BFO on. I'm still working with IF injection. Oh, it's definitely working. It sounds like it's right on frequency, maybe. Right, let's try altering the frequency. Turn the AM off. I don't think it's quite oscillating. Interesting noise the HP makes. I think I might need to just bring it out enough to make it oscillate. No. Oh, it's oscillating now. I wonder. Okay, I'll go back to RF. Okay, watch your eardrums. I'm now going to adjust the IF. So that's the peak. And now I'm twiddling it, and here we go. We have oscillation. best thing is to try it with a real SSB signal now, I think. Well, I'm working on my CR66 again. What I'm noticing, if it's been switched on a long while, it's a little bit difficult to get an oscillation. I notice the screen grid voltage drops from about 110 down to about 100, and it's difficult to get it into oscillation. It's oscillating at the moment, but once it really warms up, it decides to stop oscillating, so not so good on that one. I might go and find another valve if I've got one. I might be lucky, just to see if the mission on the valve is a little weak or something else is happening. But it's still just about oscillating, but after a short while it'll stop. Yeah, it's just about to stop oscillating. Here we go. There we go, it's stopped. Haha. Okie doke. Been doing a little bit of experimenting. It's not going to focus, but with some other EBF 89s I've got laying around there. Got a lower gain, so it's having a little trouble getting them to oscillate, but what I've decided to do in the finish is actually change the feedback resistor. It was a 470, I've now got a 390k in, and actually if you think about it, it's only 150 ohm cathode resistor, so it's not a lot of feedback, but I'm finding I can now sustain a feedback to keep the BFO running even once the set's warmed up now, without having to detune the IF, this bottom IF here, too far. So that seems a little bit more reliable now, and it works a little bit better with low emission valves. So I think what I'm going to do is see if I can find a new old stock EBF 89 and just see what the difference is with a brand new valve. Well, not a brand new valve, but I'm sure you know what I'm getting at. So yeah, I think I'm getting somewhere with this now. I think I might just check the alignment again, and then I think I might just stick it back in its case and perhaps try it, connect it to a real aerial, and see how the BFO performs. Okay, I'm back on the Codar. I tried setting up the BFO with a 1.5 kHz offset and hope it might be about right, but it doesn't sound right with something like this. Not having the instructions, it's going to be a little difficult, but I've got my FT817 out, and what I'm going to do is just try and do it by ear for the moment, and just see if I can get this online. So I'm gonna, right, that's the IF centered. 1212 1212. That's good. Okay. Let's put it into lower sideband. What I've done is I've got a 30 dB attenuator on my FT817 and a tiny bit of wire on the end of that, so I'm producing just a couple of milliwatts probably. Right, let's put the BFO on, which I have, and now I'm going to have a twig and see if I can make myself sound natural by twigging the IF, but this doesn't sound that easy. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I'll put the HT monitor on. Something is amiss. On the right range, DC 2000 volts. Right, here we go. See if it does it again. Ooh, fireworks in the rectifier. Well, after my little rectifier fire, oh dear, This radio doesn't like me, does it? I'm gonna use an external power supply to bring the HT up, and I'm current limited. I'm just going to see what happens. I've had intermittent crackles on this radio for some time, so I'm just bringing the voltage up. 44, and it's current limiting. Allow it a little bit more current then. 70 volts. Let's see if we can. Alright. There we go. 73. It's 10 milliamp. Current limit again. 21 milliamp. I think. A bit more. That's 139 volts. Well, something's happening. Oh, I can hear hiss out the speaker. Must be the rectifier then, I reckon. 30 milliamps. 160. 90. Hit the current limit again. 36 milliamp. 107. Might be a bit high. Leave it around 230. Well, at least the IF is oscillating this time. Oh, that's good. Right, well, we'll have to see. Leave it on for a little while, current limit, and see what happens. Well, I reckon it's the rectifier. I've been working on this for a few days now, off and on when I get time. I'm not very impressed by this self-oscillating BFO. I've been online as well, and I understand there are other receivers that utilise this, and it never provides a particularly good BFO. It's more really for CW. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, it works, but I'm having to constantly keep adjusting the IF core to keep it oscillating. I'm not sure if it may be possible to produce more feedback by doing some alterations to the circuit. So that might be a possibility. The other possibility is to build a small transistorized BFO and pop it under the chassis and take that option. Or the other alternative is to start sticking holes in the chassis and put a proper valve BFO in it. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to try and keep it relatively original, but the truth is I'm probably only going to want to be using it on AM. I've got the matching transmitter and the pre-selector, which I'm going to work on next. So the aim was to have a little play with AM and see what AM is like. It's something I've never played with, but I'll keep sitting here and adjusting it, but it's staying in oscillation quite nicely now. But it's not the best circuit I've come across, I don't think. But I'll see if it stays in oscillation, and I think I'll box it up for now and just give it a go on the air with an aerial and see what happens. So there we go. Not 100% success, but making progress. Okay, so I've attached it to my top band aerial. It's fairly lively on the local station, but I think with such a big aerial, what I've noticed is, yeah, I'm receiving my local station further down the band, so that's not so good. But I guess I've got the pre-selector to play with. Right, let's try some amateur bands.
Magazines going out
Right, let's try it on shortwave radio.
Principalement par la consommation des ménages qui a grimpé de 7,4%. Sur les dates financiers, estime le rythme à 4,5%.
That's damn strong.
Aktuell am Weltgeschehen.
Liebe Hörerinnen und Hörer.
Just thought I'd put these two radios together I have here. It's the Heath kit I have. The RG1, it's not working at the moment, needs a bit of work on it, but this would have been about £40 as a kit, and this is about £22 to kit the Codar. But just looking what you get extra over the Codar, this has a crystal filter, and also it's a 1.6 IF, so imaging is a lot less of a problem. Plus the bands are spread out into 6 bands rather than 4, and there's a nice slow motion then fast motion reduction drive. You also get a proper BFO here, so that you can adjust it. So overall, yeah, this is a lot better machine, but obviously it cost getting towards twice as much, probably in 64, 65. I'm guessing that's approximately the time of these two units.